For the last 30 or so years, my paycheck has hit our checking account every other Thursday. And I got a rhythm of how I pay my bills and make this all work. Right around time every year in February, I'd get my annual bonus, which we would use to have some fun or save or do some home improvement. I got a rhythm. But when I retire, that rhythm's broken. It's like you're on the dance floor, grooving, and all of a sudden, the whole beat changes. Where's my money going to come from? Do I just keep tapping my savings? That big pot of money I piled up for my needs and wants whenever I want it? Well, that seems dangerous. What about my investments? Do I just go and sell something every other Thursday when I need my paycheck? Wow, that seems even more dangerous. So if you want to rock retirement, which I'm guessing you do, we're going to have to figure out creating a paycheck in retirement. And that's what we're continuing to do this month on the Retirement Answer Man Show. If you're new here, my name is Roger Whitney. Welcome. This is a show dedicated to helping you not just survive and walk blindly in retirement. We want you to rock retirement. And so on today's show, we're going to continue this series on how do you create a paycheck? How do you actually do retirement from a cash flow standpoint? And we're building this throughout the month of February. And in our Hot Topic segment, I'm going to share some retirement tidbits I pick up along the way that I think are sort of interesting. And then we'll go get happy and set some smart sprints so we can make sure we're being intentional about creating a great life. And it is really all about that intentionality at the end of the day. Lots of little conversations so we can continually move forward. But we can't do any of this until that all-important disclaimer. Don't skip this part because it's important. This is real simple. Don't take advice from me on this show or any other financial person unless they are working for you as a fiduciary and they know enough about you to be able to give you advice. Right? Makes sense. Think of this as helpful hints in education and talk to your legal advisor, your tax advisor, your financial advisor, or if you're married, your most important advisor, your spouse. This is all just common sense, but it makes sense. Now let's go talk about some retirement tidbits. So in the Hot Topics segment today, I just want to quickly cover 5 little retirement tidbits that I picked up along the way. I'm really a nerd about this stuff. I work with clients and we walk life and you observe things, but I also do a lot of research and go to a lot of forums on research on retirement. And there's just some things I pick up. I'll take a picture of a slide here. I'll clip an article there, or I'll come up with some observation. So I wanted to share a few of them because I always save them because I think I need to and I need to do something with them. Some of them may be impactful. Some of these just may be, that's interesting. Like this first one. There was a survey done on seniors asking them, what will be your cause of death? That's a little morbid, isn't it? But it was interesting what the estimate of the cause of death was from the respondents compared to the actual statistics. So I'm just going to run through these. 22% of the respondees said, well, heart disease will be my cause of death. 18% said cancer. Other natural, which could, be just sort of a grab bag of health things, was 28%. Accidents, 32%. It was the highest one of how they thought they would leave this earth. Homicides were 10%. Wow. People really think that's scary. That's probably watching too much news right there. And then the other category was other unnatural. 16% of respondents thought they would die from an other unnatural event. I don't even know what that means. What is other unnatural? I guess a meteor would be natural. I don't know. So let's go through these. I think these are interesting compared to the actual statistics. So let's go back. Heart disease, people thought, well, about 22% of them thought heart disease would be the cause of their death. 22% was the estimate. The actual statistic is 36%. So heart disease is a big one. one that we can actually work on. Hint, hint. Cancer, everybody said 18% was the estimate. 27% was the actual number. Cancer is a big one. Other natural, 28% was the estimate. 31% was the actual. That was the closest one in terms of estimating. And again, other natural, what is that? Hurricane? I don't know. Accidents, 32% thought they were going to have some kind of accident. Car accident, fall, slip and fall, all the things you see in the news. 32% thought they were going to die by an accident. The actual statistic is 3.5%. Now, homicide, 10%. It's 10% of the people, these are elderly people, thought they were going to die by being murdered by someone. Wow. Okay, we got to watch something else. I guess murder shows, SCI, and all those other things. 0.3% is the actual statistic for seniors and how they die. And then the mysterious other unnatural, 16% thought they would die from that. I still don't know what that is. And really, it's 2.2%. But it's interesting to see what elderly people think they're going to die from and what the statistics are. Other natural, cancer, and heart disease. Those are the big, basically third. And then homicide and accidents are actually much smaller nowadays. So that's a number one retirement tidbit. I don't know what that means, but maybe perception is not always reality. Maybe that's what it means. Okay. Retirement tidbit number 2. And this is on loneliness. This is a real short one, but there are a lot of studies that show that, or indicate, would be a better way of saying it, that loneliness will shorten your life as much as smoking and drinking. And by some measures, it's worse than being obese. I think this is very accurate, just from my unscientific observation and experience of walking life with people, especially people in retirement as they age. Because I think loneliness is one of the things that we don't acknowledge is going to happen. And it just sort of sinks in as you get older. And we've talked about this before. My grandmother, when she was in her 90s, literally, she outlived 2 husbands and all of her friends and all but one of her children. She was the last person standing, and that can be really lonely. And that takes a toll, not just on shortening your life, because she lived into her 90s, but probably even more insidious in drastically decreasing the quality of your life. Loneliness is a big one when you retire. And the time to think about it is early, because you have to keep regenerating friendships and connections with people, not just your age, but younger than you, because that's going to hopefully increase the quality of your life. That's one reason why I hang out with Nicole. She's so young. She helps this old dog stay sharp. Okay, retirement tidbit number 3. This has to do with another gardening metaphor. I've always used orchards and hunting and killing. I'm just going to read the quote as I saw it. And this was from a retirement forum I went to late last year. And I thought this was interesting because it goes from accumulation to decumulation, that switch that we make when we retire. And so the quote goes, "For decades, we've viewed our investment assets as flower gardens. We water them, they grow, and we admire them from afar as they continue to grow and bloom. In our 50s, we start to think of our assets like a vegetable garden, where we're going to need to eat from them and need to think about how much they'll be able to provide us." I think it's a good analogy, a good metaphor to think about it. And the mindset in growing a flower garden is very different than the mindset of growing a vegetable garden. Vegetable gardens are not as beautiful necessarily, but they feed us. We want it to be much more robust, and we want it to be sustainable. But I think that's an important distinction of moving from the accumulation phase of life to the decumulation stage. It's harvest time, and what serves us well in accumulation time doesn't necessarily serve us well when we're starting to harvest. And I think we need to make that distinction. All right. Now let's go to retirement tidbit number 4, the order of things. And I encounter this a lot, especially in retirement planning and especially with very detail-oriented people, which most financial advisors are. And a lot of individuals are, especially ones that listen to financial podcasts like you. They focus on government policy and Social Security. They focus on the academic structures of modern portfolio theory or asset allocation or spreadsheet cash flow analysis. I've seen spreadsheets that literally blow my mind. There are so many things going on there. And it goes back to that quote, trying to be more precise over and over again doesn't necessarily equate to accurate, but it feels good. And this exercise of counting the cost, doing the spreadsheets, thinking from a scientific or academic point of view is really important. But what I think gets lost a lot by advisors, but also by individuals, is the art and the practical side of things. We latch on to these academic models or these spreadsheets and realize it's not really showing us the whole picture. And it's actually a false sense of confidence without the practical and the artistic side of things. I think that's one of the biggest problems in almost all retirement planning, actually. All right, retirement tidbit number 5. Social media and depression. So psychologists at the University of Pennsylvania came out with a study recently, and it concluded that those who drastically cut back their use of things like Facebook and Instagram, etc., often saw a marked improvement in their mood and how they felt about their lives. I would agree with that. I would concur with that. It's that whole, what we see, it actually isolates us more. You think social media, it makes us more social. Many times it isolates us more because we become observers of others and we think we're observing their life. When you see your buddy from high school or college on Facebook, you think you're in tune with how their life is. Here's a hint, you're not. Because the life that you see portrayed on a Facebook or an Instagram are sort of like the covers of those fashion magazines where everything is airbrushed and there's no celluloid, everything is, tucked and skin is smooth and everything else. It's all manufactured. So what ends up happening is, this isn't the study, this is just me from reading, is we're seeing a fictionalized version of someone's life and we don't know about their struggles. We don't know about their pains. And so, but we're comparing ourselves to the version they're presenting, just like a magazine with body image. And that can make us feel bad about ourselves. So when it comes to this social media, I think it's important because it becomes an addiction and it's designed to become an addiction, is how do we actually harness it to improve our lives as we are retiring in baby boomers? Because there's a lot of great benefits of staying connected and making connections. I have friends all over the world as a result of networks I've been involved in. I think of the RRC that way. I think that's like the Rock Retirement Club. I think that's a healthy example of using this kind of technology. So we're going to noodle on that when we go through technology and how it's changing retirement. But I thought that was an interesting result from the study. And the study actually was done on undergraduates. And from raising 2 kids, I can see how this will affect them or has affected them. So those 5 retirement tidbits to tickle your mind. And now let's go figure out how we start to create a paycheck for retirement. All right, now we're going to begin the process of creating this paycheck or recreating this paycheck so you, my friend, can get back in some rhythm of cash flow and have some clarity about how this is all going to work. So we're going to talk today about setting up what is traditionally called the bucket system or the cash reserve system. This is something I've used in my practice for a good period of time. And I think it's a good foundation in recreating your paycheck so you can find that rhythm and have some confidence that you're going to be able to pay for all this stuff. So what is the bucket system or the cash reserve system? So this is basically creating cash reserves to fund consumption over and above what you keep in your normal emergency fund. So this is not part of the emergency fund. This is monies over and above that to fund your consumption. And I like to set it up in an account and have the account labeled your payroll account. So when you retire, your boss is not going to pay you anymore, or your company is not going to pay you anymore. You're going to have to pay yourself. So it makes sense to set up a payroll account to hold reserves to fund your paycheck. And these reserves that we're going to be talking about are not included in your overall asset allocation policy. So these are separate from these things. So we want to replace your company and recreate this paycheck. So we need to have a payroll account so we have an account where monies can come out of it. So that's basically what we're going to do. The benefits of having the bucket system is, unlike in years past where the idea was you just sell things as you need it and you think in terms of withdrawal rates, the benefits of this is we're going to have a lot more clarity of where money is going to come from for your consumption, especially early in retirement. And that is essential because retirement is listed as one of the top 5 most stressful things that can happen in your life, along with losing a job, divorce, things like that. So you're going through a major life change, and having some clarity on how you're going to pay for things can help you navigate this major change. It's also going to make you more resilient in your investment assets. One thing we talk about all the time are sequence of risk or return risk. What if we have bad markets all up front? And we know that can be disastrous to a retirement plan. Having this cash reserves over and above and outside of your investments can help defend against sequence of return risk. And recreating a paycheck by having this payroll account or this bucket can help you control your spending. I mean, a lot of times when you retire, you have more liquid assets than you've ever maybe had in your life. You have huge 401ks and IRAs that you could actually touch that weren't something that you were just saving. It's very easy to overspend when you couple that with the idea that you're going to have a ton of free time on your hands and you're excited about those go-go years because you're free. So recreating a paycheck in this way can help you control spending because you're used to spending, I'm guessing, the money that naturally flows into your bank account from your paycheck. So you can get back into that rhythm. And it's good to have a rhythm so you can work in an automatic fashion rather than looking at this huge pot of money and saying, well, what if I just take a little bit more for this or a little bit more for that? And then the last benefit, not that there aren't probably more, is when we're thinking about being intentional about things, it's going to give us some runway to make adjustments in a pretty volatile world in retirement in terms of markets and life and spending and inflation and everything else. It's a volatile world. So we want to have some visibility going forward so we can identify risks and opportunities early and make little adjustments. This gives us a lot of that. Now, some of the disadvantages of having a payroll account and funding it the way that we're going to talk about is it may seem really inefficient, especially if you have a growth mentality, right? I know people that they understand long-term averages and they're ready to take the risk and they're totally fine. So it may seem really inefficient and really, really boring, especially when markets are hot, which could increase behavioral missteps in taking more risk because you feel like you're being left out. I always refer to this as sort of the designated driver, building this cash flow system that we're going to be talking about today and in the coming weeks. It means you're going to be a lot more conservative potentially, which is sort of like being the designated driver, right? When the party's going on and people are laughing and every joke seems to be funny, you sort of feel like you're missing out. And that can cause you, well, maybe just one drink's okay. Maybe if I just try to stretch a little bit for yield with this quote unquote safe money, it'll be okay. So there's a disadvantage because it might feel too conservative for some people. And the second disadvantage in a traditional cash flow bucket system, at least the one that I've used in the past, is 2 years of cash reserves, which we're going to talk about in a second, may not be enough in really bad markets. If we go back to the Great Recession, which is etched into our minds, it started in October of '07 and didn't bottom out until March of '09. So that's what? That's almost 1.5 years. And even, just because the market bottomed in March of '09 doesn't mean that the psychological trauma bottomed. For some, the psychological trauma is still there. So if you have 2 years cash reserve, and I worked with clients using the system during that time, it worked. We were able to mitigate a lot of damage and survive it. But 2 years was getting a little tight, even when we were battening down the hatches. And as we go through this month, you'll hear some adjustments that I've made personally in planning and that we're in the middle of implementing, where 2 years might not be enough. So that's one potential disadvantage of your traditional bucket system. All right, let's talk about the steps of putting this together, okay? So we're talking about a bucket system. Ultimately, we want to have 2 years of expected outflows for your base needs that we've counted the cost for last month. We talked about how to do that. So we want to have 2 years reserves for those base needs, and then 1 to 2 years of reserves for what we call the wants and the wishes, the spice of life or the more discretionary spending. But let's just say your 2 years needs are $100,000 a year or $200,000. Well, just because you need $200,000 for consumption for a base lifestyle doesn't mean you need to reserve $200,000 to fill that 2-year bucket. Now, why is that? Well, because you have 3 sources of capital. You have what we call social capital. That's going to be pensions, Social Security, inheritances, maybe immediate annuities or deferred income annuities, things that are socialized in some way that are paying you on a regular basis. Well, that's going to help fill that $100,000 a year need. So we got to account for that and subtract that. And then we have human capital, which is your ability to work, maybe some rental income or royalties that you have, things that you had, from your labor. Let's say you have $10,000 a year in pre-retirement income. Well, we know that's going to help pay for that $100,000 a year consumption budget. So really, when we're building these buckets, really what we want to know is how much do we need from the third source, which is your financial capital, right? Your cash, your accounts, your assets. So we want, if it's $100,000 to use that example, and we know we're going to get $10,000 from a pension and $10,000 from some pre-retirement work, we know we'll have a deficit left over of roughly $80,000 that we're going to have to get from our financial capital, your accounts. That's really the number we're talking about. So step 1 is to identify that deficit so we can figure out, well, how much do I need to get from my actual assets? So that's step 1. Step 2 is to fund your cash reserves. So let's stick with this. So we're going to create a payroll account. You can have that at a high yielding money market account, and you can find them online in lots of different places. And we're going to label it as our payroll reserve or payroll account. Important here, I suggest that you not have it at the same place that you have your normal checking account. Keep it somewhere else so when you log into your bank, you don't see it. And then once we set up this payroll reserve account, we're going to fund with cash the amount that we know we're going to need for our needs. In the example, that's $80,000 times 2, $160,000, and then 1 year of expected wants and wishes. So let's just call that $20,000. So we have 160 plus 20, 180 is what we'd want to fill this payroll reserve bucket with. And then you want to set up a payment from your payroll reserve to your checking account. And you can do this automatically, right? This is all easy. Money just flies around in bits and bytes nowadays. And then you want to create your paycheck. So if you're used to getting paid every other Thursday, set up a payment from your payroll reserve to your checking account for every other Thursday for what that number is. This was how you help get yourself back into the rhythm, because you are your habits. And you've had a habit of managing cash flow and living within the constraints of what your pay was, hopefully. That's probably why you can retire if you did. So you want to recreate that rhythm. And you don't want to look at the payroll account as a money you can go grab, just like you can't go grab money before your paycheck hits. And I think that's really important. So that is how you set up a bucket system. And this is how I've done it for a number of years. I'm altering it a little bit, and we're going to talk about that. And I'll explain my reasons for that. But I think this is a great first step to help you make sure you don't skip a beat when you retire and you're in need of a paycheck. So with that, let's go get happy with one of the happiest people I know, Nicole. Hello, welcome to the Happy Lab. That was horrible.
Whoa.
That was supposed to be my Irish accent, but I have no clue what I'm doing.
You sounded like that little worm in Labyrinth.
Can you do it? Can you do an Irish accent? Okay. I apologize to anyone that's Irish that is listening to the show. The whole point was my wife and I, Nicole, are watching a Irish sitcom. That is
really
hilarious.
Netflix?
Oh, yeah, totally Netflix.
Okay.
And I'm going to admit, for the first couple episodes, I had no clue what they were talking about. Because they were technically, I guess, speaking English. But the dialect was, what? And what does that have to do with being happy, Nicole? Well, let me tell you. Good thing you asked.
Yes, I am a little confused.
So I'm reading this book called The Noticer by Andy Andrews. Really short wisdom kind of book with...
About Irish people?
No. With parables of, wisdom. And in it, there's a husband and wife. One of the parables is there's this husband and wife that are on the verge of divorce, and this mysterious man comes into their life and gives them, quote unquote, perspective. And the perspective is that they can't understand what the other one needs. They speak different dialects in expressing their love for each other. So they both love each other, but the way one expresses it doesn't resonate with the other one because they speak a different dialect. And this mysterious man that gives them perspective helps them understand the other dialect so they can better enjoy each other and better understand how each one needs to express their love and receive it. And then they're happily ever after.
This sounds like a super condensed version of the 5 Love Languages book.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, exactly. A lot of books can be a lot shorter than they really are. But I think in my nearly 29 years of marriage, I can say the same thing as and it took forever, by the way, once I got tuned into my wife's dialect, I was a much better husband for her. And it works in the workplace too, right? You and I speak different dialects and we're productive together because I think we understand to a point what our dialects are. So spend some time, maybe get the book, and I think it'll make you happier.
Sounds like a good read.
All right, now let's go set a smart sprint.
On your marks, get set.
And we're off to take a baby step over the next 7 days to rock life and retirement.
That's right. We're going to set a smart sprint, Nicole. And I have 2, actually.
Oh.
I know. It's going to be a big week, guys. Number 1, go tell your spouse and loved ones that you love and appreciate them.
But in their love language?
Yes. I was about to try to do an Irish one, but
no.
don't do it. Okay. Yes. And think about, maybe that's even better. Think about how they need to receive it before you do it. Good one, right?
That is a good one.
And number 2 is fund your emergency fund.
Ooh.
Always got to do that because
it's pretty important.
Yeah.
Maybe you should reverse the order. In fact, I don't know.
And it's time for a special announcement. Hey, you, while you're listening to this, maybe on the treadmill, don't forget tomorrow is Valentine's Day.
Ooh, hot tip. Yes.
Hot tip. And here's a pro tip from an old dog. It's okay to get a gift, but you better get a card. Card with no gift is better than gift with no card. That is a dialect that I learned long ago. I hope you have a wonderful Valentine's Day. To love on each other, but also just to love on yourself.
We appreciate you joining us today for this episode of Retirement Answer Man. Be sure to visit rogerwhitney.com/answers to access the Retirement Answer Library with over 30 checklists to help you make the most of the only life you have. Remember, you have more power than you realize to create an amazing life starting today with Retirement Answer Man. The opinions voiced in this material are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. All performance referenced is historical and no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Have a wonderful day.